live and direct, live on the set, diagonally, on the tilt, whole room on tilt. So good to see you guys. Feel like standing tonight. Feel like dealing with, like the art gallery setup. Want you guys to check out this original piece. I would love to describe it some more, but one of these days I'll have the artist herself. I'll have her describe this piece. I've had it for some time. Shame on me because this particular piece has a name and I don't know the name. The name is on the back. So, next live, I'll make sure I share that name with you guys. But support your local artists because this is not just a local artist. This is actually an artist who their artistry has entered into many people's homes. They've been on TV, they've been in magazines, they've been in areas of great gatherings, they've been throughout New York City. Their artwork has been displayed in Atlanta. Um, there's other cities that their artwork has been displayed, but those are definitely two major markets that I'm aware of. One, New York City, another one, Atlanta. Candy, you all should know Candy from Escape fame, writer extraordinaire, producer. She does many magnificent things, just an extremely talented woman. She's displayed some of this original DMC art. She's displayed some of her artwork. Her co stars play on co stars because that's what they are, such as coasters. That's what it is. So, nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, we want to take some time tonight to discuss something. And what we would like to take the time tonight to discuss, but before we even get into that, where are my manners? One, I apologize. I'm not fashionably late. Duty calls. Parenting is a never ending job. All you parents out there know that. If you're not a parent, you will know that. It's a never ending job. There is no schedule for parenting. There's no such thing as parenting time. That life doesn't work that way. Being a parent is a full time job, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Last night I was sleeping. My sleep kept getting interrupted. And at one point, when I was awake, my son, who his actual birthday was or is today, but my son yelled out in the middle of the night. But I had to really compose myself that I didn't run in his room like John Wick because that's not typical. And this was really the middle of the night. What's going on, Oliver? Good to see you. Hello to you. So, with that being said, parenting is a never ending job, real life, serious situation. Big Randy, what's good? What's good, my brother? So, if you are envisioning being a parent, poquito, poquito, not so much. Hey, what's going on? How are you? If you really want to be a parent, I strongly encourage you to take into consideration who the other parent is going to be. You just don't want to go into the process of having children just because you want to have a child. The other parent plays a major part and role in your actual child, where they stand emotionally. That's cool, man. I appreciate the fact that you're here. Yo no hablo inglés. It's okay. It's okay. He, Oliver is saying that he doesn't understand English, but I appreciate the fact that you checking in on the chat, Oliver. So take that into consideration. Look to have adios, buenos noches, Oliver. Take that into consideration and really look for a good person, a really good person for you to have children with. And hopefully, this is someone who you're going to have a relationship with for the rest of your natural life. But with that being said and done, adios, mi amigo. With that being said and done, we want to discuss race. We want to discuss race, but in a nuanced conversation. we want to discuss race because race is something that it always pops up and people seem to respond to it the same way. Sometimes there's situations where race has absolutely nothing to do with it, but people will make it about race. And the reason why they would make it about race is because they don't have the correct information to deal with the situation. So they can only go with what it is the easiest thing for them to go with. So let's say, for argument's sake, you have a white woman and you have a black man, and there's a discrepancy between the two of them. It's easy for any onlooker to say, oh, she's a Karen, he's just minding his business, because that's what we see so often. Many times that is the case. Many times it's not the case. But it's easy to look at people from a different race and automatically just put them in a situation where they have to now fit the narrative of those that's speaking about this was a situation where race was involved. It's not always the case. You have people who will say somebody's a race hustler. If you don't know about that, that's somebody who looks to exploit people's race and looks to get some form of gathering only based off race. If a situation does not fit that mold or doesn't check the boxes, then they don't really want to deal with it because they just want to push race. Race is also something very easy for people to identify with. I can look at you and, for the most part, be correct with what my assumption is that you're racist. So if I'm out here trying to sell stuff to people or merchandise off of people, it's easy to go and use race because that's something that people can easily identify with. You have something called race baiting. Uh, that you can hear a lot. You can definitely hear that on the what they call the right, where they'll accuse certain people, and it's not just necessarily people of another race, but they'll accuse certain people of race baiting. My particular issue with that terminology of race baiting is that in order for somebody to race bait, that means that whatever it is you would catch with that bait is already present. So, yeah, it may be a little bit, squeamish or cringeworthy that a person is a race baiter, but why are they even able to catch the racist? Because with the race bait, you're going to catch the racist. So the problem is that there's racists around, and this particular person, even if they operating on a low frequency, this particular person has been able to understand that all they got to do is push certain buttons, get to certain pressure points, and now that racist is going to blow their cool. They're going to blow their cover. But why is that? Why are you a racist to begin with? Why are you easily being drawn out by the race baiter, right? When you go fishing, you use bait, but you're not going to go fishing in the middle of the desert. You're not going to go fishing in the park by the trees. You're going to go fishing in the pond. You're going to go fishing in the lake. You're going to go fishing in the river because that's where the fish are. So when I pack my tackle box and I've got bait, I'm supposed to be doing what it is that I'm doing. Now, I'm not saying I'm a race baiter, but what it is that I'm saying is that if I have bait because the catch is there. So don't be so quick to be mad at the race baiter. You got to identify the racist and say, why are you here? Why are you who it is that you are, right? Why are you a racist? Why is it that people can easily identify you in the crowd? Because everything about you is not based off of the merit of individuals or the character of individuals or the parameters of how they live their life. Everything about you is based off of other people's race. Now, here is something about race. You can have a racist. Now, this is something tricky. The suffix, which is what you add on to a word, and it can change the application, possibly the tense or definition of the word, the suffix, which comes at the end of the word, ist, ist, is usually a person that's highly in favor of that particular thing. For example, I spoke about this artwork behind me, original DMC artwork. This was done by an artist. So this particular artist is a person who art is their craft. They're about art because they have this talent and this inclination for art. You get this. This is done by an artist. I could not do that. So a racist really should be, like how a patriot is. A patriot, a patriotic person, may not necessarily or should not necessarily hate other nations or other countries. They should just be in favor or have a preference for their own, which there's honestly nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with celebrating your culture or your nation or your race. So a racist really should be, in genuine thought, somebody that just is more inclined to do things according to their race. They prefer their race. Now, when we say prefer, here is the issue. There is a humongous difference between preference and discrimination. See, the discrimination is when you now deal with the genuine idea of what we know of a racist to be. So because you're of a different race, you shouldn't walk your dog here. You can't sell water here. You can't live here. You can't drive here. You can't date that particular woman, right? That's the actions based off of the racist thoughts of a racist. So what should have been a person who's just like, well, you know what? I'm not against any other race. I'm just in favor of my own. I just prefer my own. The women I like to date women of a particular race. I'm not saying other women are ugly. I'm not saying other women are worthy. I'm not saying any of that. Because to be pro one doesn't mean I'm anti two. I'm just pro one. I celebrate and I advocate for one. I'm not against someone else doing it. I don't feel offended or my feet are being stepped on if somebody else is like, well, hey, I like my race. I love my race. I think my race is beautiful. That doesn't offend me because I find my race to be beautiful. And guess what? We're different for a reason. We were made different. So, unfortunately, in time, and especially in America, you do have racists, and the racists who we do have are the individuals who will hate you because you're of another race. But there's something to that. And what we have is not just individuals who will be against you because you're of a different race. You actually have individuals within your own race or of that same race who are against the people from within their race. And that's a problem. And if you were paying attention in the year of 2024, which the calendar has now changed and it's 2025, you would see that race played a major part in the conversations in America. If you thought America was past race relations and racial tensions, you're sadly mistaken. If you were hoping that because there was a white basketball player and a black basketball player on the same team, that racial issues were dead in the United States of America, no. You had several different issues in the United States of America, in this country, several in this great land. You had several issues throughout the year of 2024, which exposed um, where people stand regarding race. One of those things was Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. Many people support Caitlin Clark. Many people support Angel Reese. And you have people who support them both. Some people identify with Caitlin Clark not because she's just a basketball player or an athlete. Some people identify with her because of her ideologies, where she stands in life, how she lives off the court. Some people identify with that, so they support Caitlin Clark. Some people support Caitlin Clark because she's an athlete, she's a professional, she's very good at what it is that she does. Some people identify with Angel Reese because the way how she looks, the way how she conducts herself, her style of dress, right? Some people identify with her because she's a professional athlete at this point. Some people identify with her because she's a champion. Some people identify with her because she went to LSU. Some people identify with her because she's from Baltimore, right? Some people identify with her because she's a black athlete. She's a black woman who did very well for herself in her collegiate career. She's a champion. And then she moved on to the highest level in women's basketball in the United States of America. But some people feel that the way of how the media portrayed Caitlin Clark was as if she was the champion, but she never was a champion. So she never actually won. When the notion is that America is about winning. But Caitlin Clark never won. She's a contender. She's a great talent. She's a competitor. She reaches championship status, but she never actually was successful at becoming a champion. Not on the college level. And her WNBA career at this point is too short. She's only had one season thus far, and she did not win, clearly, right? So there are people who feel that Caitlin Clark, she is being pushed more so because she's white, right? Some people also say her sexual orientation is more palatable for the masses because she's a heterosexual white woman who's a standout athlete. And that is something that's more marketable to people. They would rather push somebody like that as opposed to somebody who doesn't identify with that sexual orientation. Some people take offense to that. One of the things about Caitlin Clark is that it's not necessarily the first time that this has been done. And when I say this, meaning this type of brandishing or branding from the media. I'm going to give you someone else. Now, people will go to Magic Johnson and Larry Bird because Angel Reese, figuratively speaking, she could be Magic Johnson. And Caitlin Clark, figuratively speaking, she could be Larry Bird. That's kind of a good one because Magic Johnson was the champ. Larry Bird was not. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson played in the NCAA final, and Larry Bird's team lost to Magic Johnson's team, right? Indiana State, if I'm not mistaken, lost to Michigan State. So Caitlin Clark and the Iowa team, is it the Hawkeyes? They lost to LSU, the Tigers. And then Caitlin Clark lost the next year to the Gamecocks, if I'm not mistaken, South Carolina, coached by Dawn Staley. But the media in the past did pick someone, and this is a collegiate athlete, someone who was successful, like Caitlin Clark was. They picked someone in the past, even though, and I'm referring to sports now, even though this particular person was not the number one overall pick, but this person got more attention. They were on the front page of the newspaper. And it was a similar racial dynamic because the one who should have gotten the attention because of where they were picked and their success, the one who should have gotten the mass attention didn't. This is actually Johnny Manziel. If you go back, Johnny Manziel, quarterback from Texas A&M, if I'm not mistaken, Johnny Manziel was drafted, I believe, 22nd in the year he was drafted. And he was drafted 22nd to the Cleveland Browns. But Johnny Manziel got the front page of the newspapers. Johnny Manziel got most of the media coverage and attention the year he went into the draft. Johnny Manziel was not the number one pick. The number one pick that year was actually Jadeveon Clowney from, ironically, South Carolina. Gamecocks, if I'm not mistaken. Wild name. It's a fighting bird, male chicken. Nevertheless, Jadeveon Clowney was the number one pick. But he didn't get the front page of the paper. He didn't get the front page of some of these national newspapers. He got a little inlet. Sometimes he didn't even have his actual picture, even in the sports section. Some newspapers, if those of you who still read the newspaper or even remember what a newspaper is, some newspapers, the front page will be, let's say, something political or a crime, a serious crime. But then the back of that newspaper, especially when it was the Sunday edition, will be where the sports section will begin. So a big issue in sports, whether good or bad, will be on the back page, the back cover, if you will, so to speak, right? And Jadeveon Clowney, sometimes it would just have his name in small letters in the bottom. It would just say that he was picked overall number one. But Johnny Manziel, they would have a picture of him. They would have him doing the money sign. That was his celebration when he was at Texas A&M. They had him, but he was the 22nd pick. So why would you have the 22nd pick on the front page of the paper getting all of this attention above the first pick? It just doesn't make any sense. So in sports, people have seen that, and they've seen it before. So there was something about not necessarily Caitlin Clark herself that was rubbing people the wrong way, but it was the attention she was getting. And then people felt, well, hey, listen, there have been others who've done greater things, not only on the collegiate level, but then even in the WNBA, who've done greater things than what Caitlin Clark has done or is currently doing, and they did not get as much media attention as she is getting. And they want to know why. So they're going to look at the fact that, well, overwhelming majority of the previous athletes who were successful, who were champions, both on the college level and in the professional level, or maybe not in the professional level, I'm sorry, but maybe not in the collegiate level, but in the professional level, or maybe not in the professional level, referring to the WNBA, but in the collegiate level. And they didn't get as much hype. So that rubs people the wrong way. But the reason why that rubs people the wrong way is, once again, because of that issue regarding race. So they're sensitive to that because they don't feel that things are on an even playing field. They don't feel that if you take an athlete, and this particular athlete is successful, they've reached the mountaintop, and this athlete is a black woman, and this particular athlete has garnered all of the accolades that you can, right? Like, so she's reached her maximum potential as far as winning is concerned on a team level, but yet she doesn't get the attention. So why was it that she wasn't marketed like that? Why was it that she didn't get the deals? So again, those type of issues is what we saw in 2024. Another issue, and this is one for me, is really odd. Another issue we saw is with Daniel Penny. Now, Daniel Penny is a man who was supposedly riding the train, and another individual came on the train and was agitating people, bothering people. Daniel Penny snuck up on this man and then performed some form of hold to choke this man, and eventually other individuals grabbed on and held and subdued this man as well. Daniel Penny is white. The gentleman whose life was taken is not. He's black. Now, one of the things which happened in this particular case is that some people were saying, well, Daniel Penny was told to stop, that you're going to take this man's life. Stop doing it. So, whatever the hold is you have on him, don't do it anymore. But he continued. There are also quite a few people who are like, well, this guy was an agitator. He was provoking people. He was bothering people on the train. Now, bothering people on the train, I don't see why that leads to physical engagement from someone else, especially a person who's not law enforcement. Now, some of the things which I have to see, which are factual, is they make reference to Daniel Penny being a person of a military background. So what? If you know anything about some of the tragic incidences that just took place recently around New Year's, the people who are alleged to have committed those crimes, the culprits of those crimes right now allegedly have military backgrounds. So that doesn't necessarily make you free from reproach. And just because you have a military background, and this is no shade to anyone in the military, just because you have a military background, that does not mean that all of your actions are justified. You can do wrong while having a military background. You can do wrong in the military. There is such a thing as being court-martialed. There is such a thing as having the MPs coming and arresting you because you're breaking military crimes. You're doing the wrong thing. There are military members who violate international law. So because over the fact that they're in the military, that doesn't give them a pass to just do what it is that they do. Who is this person? Why they did what they did? Oh, don't worry about it. He's a Marine. Oh, okay, forget it. No, you don't get that. You don't get that at all. So the issue with Daniel Penny is that why exactly did you put your hands on this man? If people are familiar with New York City, you know that New York City, number one, has a high population. The more people you have, you're going to have more types of people. So you're going to have more criminals. You're going to have more people with disabilities. You're going to have more people who speak another language or English is their second language. You're going to have more people who migrate from other countries. You're going to have more people who are steadfast in their ways, right? Stubborn. You're going to have a lot of things. You're going to have more people with disabilities, right? Because you have more people. You basically have an assortment of individuals. New York City has people all throughout the city, and the government of New York City, the governing body of New York City, doesn't really seem to have much of an issue. They actually seem to try to accommodate almost people who may have certain issues, even if those issues may lead them to be, as you may call, a nuisance to society. There's ways for them to basically deal with their issues in public in New York City. The Daniel Penny case was something that I was quite confused because I was waiting to hear the actual crime that the gentleman committed to justify him saying, hey, I have to go ahead and act. But I never heard it. And it seems like so many people knew very well that that was such a weak case, because all they did was they spoke about the actual crimes that he allegedly committed in the past. And some of these allegations and some of these arrests and some of these crimes that he was accused of committing and some of these things that he actually did was bad, like really bad, like horrific. But Daniel Penny wasn't responding to those crimes. So it seems as if you go to paint the narrative as if he's responding to this individual's track record. And they do that often with law enforcement. If there is a shooting of a person who's been unarmed and it crosses racial lines where the law enforcement officer is white and the person who shot is a black man that's unarmed, and notice they always throw in that nugget, unarmed, because that leads to the concept that a black person who is armed is a threat. But why is that? Many people are armed in the United States of America. Being armed should not lead to you being gunned down in the street. We're talking about people who are not engaged in criminal activity, by the way. You have a constitutional right to bear arms. So there's many, 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 many black men who bear arms. They're armed. So they tend to throw in that extra sauce to say, oh, an unarmed black man. Like, so why did you do it? See, so I understand when you say unarmed, because it's like, well, why was he perceived as a threat? But it still leads to the notion that an armed black man is a threat. You got to catch that. But why is it a threat when he has the constitutional right to be armed? Why would he be a threat? So anyway, the gentleman who Daniel Penny chose to respond to with violence, he appeared to just be a nuisance on the train and harassing people verbally. But how is it that a person who, even if they were harassing people on the train verbally, how is it that that justifies somebody to respond physically? And to the point where several men are holding this man down. I don't get it. See, so that's a particular issue which is going to cross racial lines, because people are watching a white man and several other men holding down this black man, holding him down on the train, on the subway, the New York City subway, which, by the way, has signs on the New York City subway telling you to get in contact with the train operator or NYPD in case of emergency. So did anybody do that? There's buttons. There's an emergency brake. There's a button you can push on the subway car in New York City. So if I was on the train and somebody is experiencing some form of episode or somebody's committing a crime, you're supposed to go ahead and push that button and let the conductor know, hey, this guy's beating up this other guy on the train. And then law enforcement is going to respond. Some people may not even know that the trains and the subways in New York City were designed in part by the police department of New York City. So those steps weren't taken. So if the guy was on the train, and I don't think anybody has rode the train, the subway in New York City, and not experienced somebody who was on the train who may have been bothering people. I don't think that's something abnormal. So what made this situation different? And then the biggest thing of all, you had a man, if I'm not mistaken, just several weeks ago, he set a woman on fire in the New York City subway. Where the hell are the Daniel Pennies in these situations? You have people who are pushed on the track, the subway tracks in New York City almost every day. Somebody was recently sliced with a knife on the New York City subway, I believe the platform. And where are the Daniel Pennies? You have women who are violated on the New York City subways. And yet we don't see the footage of these heroes coming out of nowhere and just choking these people out. Now, if there's a woman, an innocent woman on the subway, minding her business, looking at her phone, and this man starts violating and harassing this woman in a manner that is just uncivil in every way, shape, or form, shouldn't the Daniel Penny show up? Where are they at? So I don't get how a guy is on a train. He appears to be having some form of episode on the train, which that is not new in New York City. So here it is. He's walking up and down the train saying things, wild things. Yeah, he requires attention, but why three men? What did he do? Because these violent men and women who are riding the New York City subways and actually bringing harm to people, we're not seeing that response. Oftentimes, you don't even see the response of law enforcement where they use violence. You will hear about it after the fact. They'll respond after the crime was committed. So that's a particular story that is going to make it seem like something's not right for the gentleman nearly for his life to be taken in that way. And then instead of people dealing with the actual encounter of what led to Neely's life being subjected to Daniel Penny's grip and being subdued along with the other men. I don't know why the other men their names didn't come up. Why weren't they just as guilty by association? Because Daniel Penny was not found guilty in the court of law. But why weren't they held accountable the way Daniel Penny was held accountable? Some people feel Daniel Penny was not held accountable. I'm not getting into the fact of whether or not he's guilty of committing a crime. I'm getting to the reality of the matter of, did the gentleman who he responded to physically, he decided to use physical force, did that gentleman commit a crime that warranted him responding that way? I never knew of it. It was never stated. It was never said that he was committing battery. It was said explicitly throughout that he was being a nuisance, he was agitating people, he was saying things. That's not uncommon for New York City. But because of the fact that Daniel Penny is a white man and Neely is a black man, that is going to strike the nerve when it comes to race relations in the United States of America. So we got a little bit long winded with that. So remember, we're talking about race in the United States of America. We're talking about how race is covered. It could be something that's so called innocent, like sports, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and it could be something that's a matter of life and death, Neely Penny, right? So when you see that, you go, well, racism or racial sensitivity or race baiting or racists, they're alive and well. So we can look at the people who are saying, well, oh, this person is the bad guy when it comes to the racial relations. And you'll tend to look to someone from the opposite race, or let's say the dominant race, or let's say the race that seemed to prevail in the encounter between the two races. There's something to that as well. The thing to that is not only do you have that, you have the other individuals who are of the same race who are looking to exploit their own. So they may actually be just as discriminatory in practice and thought as the racists against their own race. And they do that in manners that they go to limit you because of your race. They let you know openly. It's as if they just have a open display before the world that they can let their own race know that because you're of this race, you should not do that. I forbid you. I'll reject you. I will exclude you from your race if you go ahead and do that. If you identify with this political ideology, you are no longer welcome in this race. If you listen to that music, if you like that person, you are no longer allowed. If you are educated over there, if you like a post of a person who works for that organization, you are a disgrace to your race. See, those type of things, that's also the ugly part of race relations in America because it allows weasels like that who can do that, who can act that way. And many of those people, especially when you're dealing with black race, and when I say black race, please understand, I'm not talking about actual black people. When I say black race, I'm referring to the idea that because you're a black person, that is a citizen of the black race, if you will, then this is what it is you should do. This is how it is you should be, right? And then there's individuals within the black race who promote that way of thinking. Oftentimes, the black race in a space in public, media, social media, the black race is aligned with the Democratic Party. And it baffles me that a race would be aligned with a political party because that doesn't really make any sense. A race can't be locked in step with a political ideology because the political ideology was not started by that race. That political ideology is not structured to meet the affairs of that race. That political ideology is set up to find anyone who'll align with that ideology. That's it. That's how it goes. That's how politics works. So you don't have to be of a particular race to align with a political ideology. Just like you don't have to be from a particular city to support an agenda that's according to sports. You don't have to be from Minnesota to like the Minnesota Twins. You could like the Minnesota Twins and be from Detroit, right? Now that's sports, it's not politics. Politics is much more serious, much more life mattering matters, if we could say that. But nevertheless, what the hell does the Democratic Party have to do with being black? I don't get it. Anybody could be a Democrat. You have Asian Democrats, you have white Democrats, you have Middle Eastern Democrats, Asian, you have African Democrats. You have people from the Caribbean who are Democrats. And all of those people who I just named, you have those same people who are conservative. So, what does black have to do with being a Democrat? The LGBTQ community, that's also in the media space, is heavily pushed to be aligned or synonymous with being black. Which, why? People who identify with LGBTQ community come from all different races, all different countries, all different continents, both hemispheres. So why is it a black thing? Why do you see the linking between the black community and the LGBTQ community? Some people will say, well, both have faced discrimination, and no, there's nothing similar between the discrimination and the discriminatory practices against a whole group of people, regardless of what you identify with, and another group of people who are a select group of people among every group of people. You just can't even make that comparison. That doesn't make any sense. That's like saying all people, if people were discriminating against short people, that's like saying, well, we're discriminating against short people, so Asian people would have to understand that. No, that's offensive. Asian people do not need to understand and are not automatically in the same category as short people. That's rude. That's offensive. So why would you go ahead and say people who identify with one thing that they should be aligned with being black? That if you're black, then that means you identify with this, or you're open to this, and you're open to that, and you're open to this. No, you're black, you're black. That's it. Like, what you do and how you do it is a completely different story. So you would see, especially in 2024, you saw so many people who claim to represent black media who, when they speak for the black community, it's not the actual members of the community, but it's over the affiliation that they're pushing and promoting for the black community to take on. And then if you are of the black community and you don't have that affiliation that they're pushing, then somehow, some way, you're not of the black community. It makes you wonder who actually put those individuals in place to represent the black community. Because again, whenever does any community say, because we're this is who we must be, this is how we are, it goes hand in hand. Again, I just don't see that. I just don't see how that makes sense. So that's another part of the racial dynamic in the country, where you're going to have people from the opposing race, and that could be anyone, who may look to discriminate against you because you're not of their particular race of preference. And then you have people who are amongst your race who, because you are not helping them to close their deals, their particular agenda is to gather as many people from their race as possible to align them with their particular political agenda. So it's as if they get commission, but they can't go to anyone and everyone. So what they'll do is they'll break things down to the lowest common denominator, and they'll go, well, you black, I'm black, you supposed to be doing this. Why is that? Right? So that's how race will be used against you, even from someone within your race. So it's real interesting the way of how race is used, the way of how race is discussed, the way of how race is set up. You have some people who say just some outright outlandish things when it comes to race. You have former Governor Nikki Haley of Indian descent, You had a man who took people's lives unjustly. He was a coward. He was a sick, nasty individual. He was a criminal. He was evil. That young man's name is Dylan Storm Roof. In South Carolina, he took the lives of 9 people, 9 parishioners of a church on a night of Bible study. Nikki Haley, who was governor at the time, she said, and I'm not talking about her taking down a Confederate flag. The Confederate flag is a much deeper, nuanced conversation for another time. But why do you want credit for taking down the Confederate flag when the Confederate flag was waving before Dylan Roof did what it was that he did? So if the Confederate flag was such an issue for you, why didn't you take it down the minute you got in office? Why did you wait for him to commit his heinous crime to then say, we need to take this flag down? What changed about the flag? Nothing changed about it. That's nuance, right? That's perspective. But let's get to the point. Nikki Haley said the media wanted to make the Dylan Storm Roof shooting of the 9 innocent people at the AME Baptist Church, they wanted to make it about race. I don't know how the hell she even said that. And I believe she said it to Glenn Beck. This is what happens when certain people are in conversations and intellect is not present in the conversation, because that should have been questioned immediately. Excuse me. How did the media make this uh, murder? How did the media make this about race when it was one man of one race who took the innocent lives of 9 other people who all were from a different race than him? And he was there to do that. He was looking to take the lives of people who were not of his white race, but he was looking to take the lives of people of the black race, and he did. So, how did the media make it about race? Didn't he? So, again, ladies and gentlemen, people of the chat, this is what it is we find ourselves dealing with when it comes to race. And far too often, the individuals who are in the conversations to represent whether one particular race or to represent a nuanced look to race relations or racial ideologies or understanding, they fail because either they're the racist or the race baiter, as they may call them, or the ones selling out their own race. And those are the loudest voices in the room. Not the smartest people in the room, but they may have the most influence in the room, right? And if you have the most influence in the room, that's not garnered from within the room. That means you have more backing from outside of the room. And that backing is unseen. But the ones who the people see, the ones who galvanize the people, is that loudest influential voice in the room. But they have other systems at play that work with them. So you'll hear their voice more and you'll hear their voice louder than others. And the other voices will be stifled in silence. So you don't hear those other voices like you hear that one influential voice or the 2 or the 3. So there's no rebuttal to what it is that they say, or they themselves are afraid to engage in dialogue with people. One of the things that really tripped me out with black media is when they would look at somebody like Ice Cube and attack him because he may be on Fox or he may sit down with Tucker Carlson. I thought when you're a person of conviction and you're a person of belief and you're a person who has ideas and you stand behind your ideas, you'll talk to anyone. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Fred Hampton never said, I'm only going to talk to a black publication. If that was the case, he wouldn't have been hurt because the white media that was racist would have saw to it that nothing he ever said even reached the masses. Fred Hampton was able to reach the masses through white media because he spoke to white media, you donkey. Malcolm X had endless debates, was on endless forums of the white media. He wasn't ashamed. He didn't say, "Oh, well, I'm black. I can't go and talk to them." That would be dumb. When you represent, you're supposed to go before nobles, officials, people of influence, people of power, regardless of whether those people are good people, bad people. You're supposed to be before those people. And you're supposed to set them straight. You're supposed to hold it down. You're supposed to have them in awe. That's how it's supposed to be. Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson spoke before the world. He's known as an orator. He didn't stay on a corner. Like, where you guys get this stuff from? That because you're black, you're supposed to stay in a corner. Oh, it's because they didn't talk to you. And your stupidity. See, that's the issue. So you're going to have people that are going to attack you from opposing race. And when I say opposing race, I'm not saying the entire race is opposing another race. I'm speaking about a race that is being pegged or painted or designed in theory to be a race that is against you. And the racists, the individuals, the hateful individuals of that race are letting you know you're not welcome because you're not of that race. So now they make it the opposing race, if so y'all can understand what I'm saying. So it's either people of the opposing race or people from within your own race that oppose you. So it's funny. All the while they say that they represent that one particular race and they're all about that race. Yeah, right. They're a bunch of liars. So we're bringing this great conversation to a conclusion. I appreciate all of you guys for checking in. For those of you who catch this in rotation, hopefully YouTube works with me. YouTube has been kind of unfriendly to me lately. I don't know why. I don't know what's up with you, YouTube. I didn't do anything wrong. But to those of you who catch it, give a brother a like. Like, subscribe. We want to do a lot more. Want to see a lot more people on some panels. Want to have some conversations. Want to have some community building. Want to have some debate. Where the challenge is at? Where are the people who speak by conviction? Where they at? You know? It's like Kevin Samuels, he's no longer with us. Pearly Things, her time seems to have expired. Andrew Tate, his time seemed to have expired. Charlie Kirk, is that his name? Is it Charlie? Matt Walsh. Candace Owens. I actually have respect for Candace Owens, and I'm not saying actually as if I shouldn't. I'm saying actually because over the fact that one of the things that I find commendable about uh, Mrs. Candace Owens is the fact that she again will go into any room and she speaks with conviction. And she doesn't speak from this particular place or that particular place, which is going to then limit her to address particular issues. If that's what it is that she says, that's what it is that she believes, and she has enough supporting evidence for why it is that she believes it, and she's able to articulate points about the party or individuals, persons that oppose where she's at or why she opposes where they're at, she speaks to it. And I got to respect that because so many don't, especially so many who say they're so bold and they're so this and they're so that. You know, it's like things that's bad don't exist unless it's people from a other political party. Then all of a sudden it's bad. But if the person within their party does the same exact thing, it's not bad. But if someone from another party does the same thing or worse, now all of a sudden we got to talk about them for the next 72 hours. So, but I appreciate you guys. Hope you guys checking for more. Hope you guys appreciated this nuanced look on race, and it's really opened up conversation amongst yourselves, and leave some comments. I'll definitely respond. Appreciate all you guys. You guys be safe out there.